Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome again to another episode of Cross-Examination. Father Jacques and I were just reminiscing of the past Easter weekend. Father Jacques, do you want to tell everybody what you told me just about the attendance of Mass last Sunday?
Yeah, we had an amazing Easter for Dutch standards. I mean, we had 2,170 people for the Easter morning Mass, imagine. So they were absolutely everywhere, in the atrium, in the bar, in the church itself. Of course, we have big screens connected with the main church. I've never seen it as full as this Easter in church. And also for the Easter Vigil, it was over 800 people in the Easter Vigil, 22 people being received in the church, and during Easter another 6 baptisms as well of children, both Sunday and Monday, and Easter Monday, which is actually not an official feast day in the church. But we had another 900 people here for 2 misses. Unbelievable. So over Easter, 3,000 people. Which is unbelievable. So
unbelievable and inspiring, right?
Inspiring, I mean, yes, Christ is risen, but I think a lot of priests are dead after Easter. Because
on that note, you are leaving on holidays tomorrow.
Very, very happy, full of energy and life-giving. Yeah, beautiful. But yes, it's been amazing. Also, Good Friday, Holy Thursday, absolutely an amazing
and the average age as well. I thought it was a really young crowd.
A lot of young people, yes.
And with young, yes, there were babies and young, but also like again, teenagers that we talk a lot about, etc. But speaking of teenagers, I think this will be released after we release the teen podcast. So I'm really curious to see what everybody thought of that. So again, feel free to comment and share your opinion. But so yeah, on the back of a really blessed Easter Sunday and Holy Week, here we are, recovering a father across me at the table
yes.
on holidays tomorrow. Before we let him go on holiday, I thought we'd take some time to discuss the Octave of Easter, which is obviously the 8 days octave after Easter. There's some really fascinating stories in Scripture, in the Gospels in particular, around this time after the actual resurrection that I think invites a lot of reflection, invites a lot of thought. So you and I discussed before, a few of the things that I would like to discuss. For example, the story of Emmaus, also obviously Thomas that wanted to touch him or was invited to touch. Is there anything anywhere in particular that you would like to start? But one of these stories that kind of highlight, it wasn't, the stone is open. Oh, there he is. It was way more complicated than that and nuanced.
Yes, I would like to do some justice to Thomas, actually, because the other 11, they were all afraid. Right? They were in the upper room, locked themselves away from society, because obviously after the crucifixion of Christ, they were afraid to undergo the same fate, that people in society would go after them as well, because they belonged to that crazy sect of followers of Christ, which had to be eliminated by the political powers of Rome. So they were afraid, of course, to be stoned. And, well, in fact, of course, all the apostles ended up being martyred. But the only one who was out there to face the music in the street was Thomas. He wasn't with them. And then, Jesus appears to the apostles in the room, the upper room. And then Thomas missed that opportunity. Later on, there is a meeting between Jesus and Thomas was given the privilege to actually touch.
He was invited by Christ.
He was invited by Christ. Said, okay, then you put your finger on the spot where it hurts. Put your finger on the wounds. And then he says, happy are those who do not see and still believe. But he didn't call Thomas an unbeliever. Actually, he gave Thomas the privilege of literally touching him. And I think Thomas has gone down in history as the doubting Thomas and the unbeliever. But I think even with the question when Jesus said, there are many rooms prepared for you in the Father's house, and I will go there and come back to take you with me, that you may be where I am. And Thomas says, yeah, I'm sorry, but we have no idea where you are, so show me the way. And then Jesus says, okay, I am the way, I am the truth and the life. But the questions that Thomas asks are the questions and the doubts that we have as well as people. So I love that guy, I think he's a very contemporary apostle. And it is through him that we are shown a way and a different truth to a different life that we cannot understand as, a physical resurrection. Was it not? We have the Emmaus story for that as well.
Yeah, which is before we go to the Emmaus story, I want to highlight the contrast between Jesus inviting Thomas to touch him after meeting the disciples, and the disciples going to Thomas to tell him blah blah, and Thomas says, no, I won't believe it until. But I believe in the first day or the first encounter that Jesus has was with Mary Magdalena. She was told not to embrace him, I believe, right, or not touch him. There was a command is maybe a big word, but there was something to the line I'm trying to find the exact quote here, but that Jesus said, no, don't touch me, or do not embrace me, or something like that. Is there something that we need to understand from that only Thomas was the first to be allowed to touch him?
I don't know whether that there was. I mean, you also asked me a question that I don't know the answer to. But I think the same as with the disciples on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus joined them and they didn't recognize him, you could interpret it as a little bit of a divine purpose, not revealing the risen Christ. Was it a transformed or a glorified body after the resurrection? How different was that appearance after he rose from the dead? But the point of recognition was the breaking of bread, and not so much the walking with Christ. I mean, Christ joined them as a stranger. And then the disciples, and he started
deceptively, right?
Yes, deceptively. So there must have been a purpose to that to that walk where the people asked the stranger, did you not know about all these things that happened in Jerusalem over these last few days? And then Jesus started to explain the scriptures to them. And then their hearts were on fire. They somehow connected the dots to the person, the story, the crucifixion, the resurrection. But somehow it only hit home when he actually became what they received, as we do as well in the Eucharist. He was the Christ that they received in the breaking of bread. So they like we in the Eucharist, we become the body of Christ when we receive the body of Christ. So it is in doing this to remember me that they actually related back the remembering in the doing and in the breaking of bread. And this is how they resurrected him as well into their lives. And of course, the stories were also written many years after the actual resurrection, of course. So when the gospel stories, they relate back to an experience, not the historical dots and the spiritual dots, the dots of faith. They needed decades to connect. So it's what has remained. The resurrected Christ was recognized yesterday, today, and tomorrow in the breaking of bread. That is where he comes back and alive and real. And of course, for the Catholic Church, that is for us also the reason that Eucharist is the body of Christ. It's not just a symbol of, but this is the risen Christ for us. This is, it makes us sacred because the sacred enters into us and raises us up to a different level of infinite presence, not just a finite being. And that is Easter in a way. So you project back into into the present moment, and the present moment into the future. It's like going back to the future a little bit. But yeah, it's.
I want to ask who's Marty McFly in this analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
That's a lot to unpack there. But let me go back a little bit with the, not the deceptive nature of it, but his appearance or seemingly different appearance. Because I think back to the story of Lazarus, right? And again, not knowing the scripture by heart, but I believe Lazarus, it was, oh yeah, there's Lazarus. It's the same. So why in his resurrection is there this kind of cloud of mystery, and is it him, and why that's purposely there? Why? I mean, maybe you already kind of explained it in what you just explained, but
I think the resurrection, the recognition, comes through faith, not by sight. So we are looking for biological, physical proof, but it is by faith that you believe that Christ is alive. Because if you narrow it down, the bells of the church are ringing at the moment because it's midday. Sorry, little segue here. We have the Angelus to remind us that time is sacred, that we pass from morning into afternoon, and therefore in the middle of the day we consecrate our time to God, and also make time precious and sacred in what we say and what we do. So here we are.
Recording.
Okay,
for posterity.
But back to recognition of the resurrection is by faith, not by sight. If you narrow it down only to a biological resurrection, then you get into all sorts of trouble with ascension. Did the body shoot up like a rocket into the sky, or how was that? And then descending of the spirit. How it's. You cannot narrow it down to a physical resurrection only. The body rose from the dead. Yes, the grave was empty. But if we try to fill it in with definitions and to the actual biological how, you kill the miracle, you kill the mystery, because simply we don't know. The fact is that the resurrection is by sight, by insight, by faith, has kept Christ alive and God in us, with us, and through us. So
I'll bring back Thomas here, right? Because Thomas does request or require that physical proof, and eventually, Jesus does provide him with that opportunity.
Yes.
So is this? Can I interpret this as the church or the teachings of Jesus Christ inviting skepticism, inviting curiosity, maybe, to put it in a better word? How? Because to your point, what you just explained, it has to be through faith and not necessarily sight. But then there's also Thomas kind of inviting the real physical sighting.
And also perhaps the gospel writers coming to insight about, the return of Christ, the Messiah, that this is going to take longer than him just coming back immediately. This messianic expectation that Christ would come back to save the world and somehow be the new king. They also had to come to the awareness that, okay, this is a process of, for them it was decades, but for us it is millennia, of course. So Thomas was also an important person for the gospel writers to put in there and say, he touched upon the risen Christ in a way that we didn't. And yet the conclusion was, happy are those who believe without having seen. So somehow the gospel writers have given Thomas have given us the Thomas, because we step into his feet. We feel the same. We also want to see proof. So how much is revelation intended, and how much is the divine purpose planned? It is through gradual insight that you come to a continuous handing over of the faith. And every generation has an added insight of how this happens and why it is important to maintain it and why it doesn't grow old. No Easter candle has the same year on it. You don't. It is Easter in the context of 2026. And I think the resurrection of Christ in these days was also in the context of the continued gaining insight of in the fear of being persecuted for their faith, of being killed, because
Still were.
They all were. It was also this resurrection is real, but it's hard to put your finger on it.
Pardon the pun intended.
Yeah, well, but this is it. Yeah. And Thomas was granted that beautiful, literally part in the story of, but somehow he did put his finger on it. He was invited to do so by Christ. They remember that even before the baking of bread. So that already and not yet is somehow coming back.
Just coming back to what you said about, every generations over literally 2 millennia had their added insights. I think it's a beautiful idea. On a personal level, you're approaching 40 years of priesthood, you're a theologian, you studied this. What insight, maybe early or later in your life, did you come to? Like, what little mystery has unrevealed itself for you in, I don't know, the last decade, 2 decades?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, William. But I think the more you read, the more you write, the more you celebrate, the less you know. So the idea of we are only touching upon something so big that, yes, you may do a doctorate in a certain field, but we know so little, and yet it is enough to continue to keep you curious and wanting to know more about the mystery. And all the time you discover a little bit more, it reveals itself even as a greater mystery. So it draws you into the future to sort of keep on discovering more. It is literally a pilgrimage, a journey of faith, and you walk towards. It's a journey of discovery towards a greater unfolding of this tremendous presence, mystery, love, beauty. And it's
and where is, sorry to interrupt you, where is that new mystery? Because again, the scriptures, you've read them all, even if you know them all, try and explain to us, what is the added unknown or added mystery that comes over the years?
Well, somehow priesthood is it's in an institution, it's in the church, of course, so it gives you a structure to celebrate with the community, but it's also a journey of spirituality. So if your community is taken away from you because you retire or you are appointed for an administrative job, I know quite a few priests who are secretaries or treasurers or God knows what. They don't have parishes anymore. What then is left of your community support of your priesthood? So I think your personal relationship with Christ is the first thing that you need to nurture in order to stay connected to the wider community, to the mystery, to a source that gives meaning to your life. And we can be busy in many different ways with it, as a priest in a community, but also as a priest in an office somewhere in the Vatican, or a secretary of a diocese or whatever. If throughout all your busy activities you lose that personal time with Christ, that personal connection, and you can do it in many different ways. I mean, of course, we have many different kinds of priests as well. Some priests, they derive that from the daily prayers, the breviary, the liturgy of the hours, some adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, some listen to podcasts and they go for walks, whatever you do to find your space with Christ, and your sense of being connected. I think that's the discovery for me in these 40 years, that if you lose that, you lose your joy, your being grounded in a life-giving relationship. In that sense, I suppose you can compare it a little bit to a relationship between two people. You have to invest in that relationship, and if you lose it, you become a manager of a company, or a producer of a show or whatever. But that, over the 40 years, even with all the imperfections of the church, but if you lose that connection with Scripture, with Christ, and for that you do need your daily time out in order to have time in. So that's the
the variable, the true change here is yourself as a person, and
Yeah,
you and me and everybody else listening.
You slowly become, I think, more aware of the fact that it is Christ working through you, and it's not you who do this. And
Back
yes,
to
of
humility
course,
now.
no, but it's we are instruments, of course, and okay, people have different talents, and I can't sing. Some people are better.
You did
at
pretty
singing.
good on the Mass on Sunday, by the way.
Man, you have no idea how nervous I was. But we have different talents, and therefore priests get different appointments. But no matter what function you have within the church, a happy priest is a priest who has, I think, a freeing spirituality, a joyful spirituality, a spirituality that doesn't make him fulfill obligations or fulfill rules and regulations, but a priest who is happy to be one. Yesterday we had a celebration with 14 priests. The Indonesian communities were here from both Belgium and the Netherlands, and 800 people in church. And there were a lot of young priests from Indonesia, and after Mass, together with the nuns and the people, they were dancing in the aisle, and
That's what I saw.
It was
I saw some pictures
fantastic.
on social media. I was like, what was going
I
on?
thought, do I ever see Dutch priests dancing in the aisle, with the nuns? I mean, but that youthfulness, that just being happy because Easter fills you with joy, that added personal aspect, I think, is such a witness. It's not just, oh my God, Holy Week is busy and we are also stressed out because of this and that. Yes, it's busy, but it's fantastic. And that, for me, that in 40 years, the joy of being able to serve, because somehow Christ is alive in you, that is, that is amazing. And
what you're saying, but basically your personal story being the fuel for this constant discovery and mystery and rediscovering. Again, it's very true to me because, as you know, and as I explained to the podcast, I felt like I had to surrender at some point and give in to, I will not know everything, and kind of stop leaning into myself, and back to this humility thing, right? That's how I got there, and I think that's how a lot of people get there as well, through different ways and etc. But it's the humility, the surrendering, getting on your knees. Sorry, getting distracted.
And yes, well, of course, I said it in the Easter sermon, but these 3 words of Pope Francis, worth it. Humor, a sense of humor, is extremely important. If you are not joyful, perhaps, sorry for repeating it for those who listen to the sermon already, but, the greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, and there was only one purpose for that, so that my joy can be in you, and therefore our joy complete. And it is the joy of Christ that is in you. It's not only my joy that is in you, but we have to literally penetrate each other with that joy, because a life without joy is a life without love, and therefore a dead life. And I think during the Easter Vigil, when you see the joy of these newly baptized, and also the sense of, wow, I'm being introduced into a community that does this all over the world. There were over 25,000 people welcomed into the church in France during the Easter Vigil. Amazing. And in Holland this year, there were more than, in the last few decades, quite a revival of, they said nearly 600 adults were baptized in Holland. And then there are a lot of baptized who are not even officially recognized in dioceses. And so, yeah, it's that joy of people investing in their faith journey and getting something out of it as well. And a community, a sense of belonging, a sense of, being on a path of a long-standing tradition and different values, and not naive people, intelligent people. It's not just we have nowhere else to go, so let's try this. No, they have made a 9 months commitment in preparing themselves for this moment. And in that, they became each other's co-educators, with all the questions, with all the doubts, a lot of Thomases around, beautiful. But somehow they made this journey. And then they do recognize Christ in the breaking of bread. And is that the resurrection? Yes, also.
So that's the breaking of bread. That's the story of Emmaus, right? When he joins the apostles on the road. Mingles with them. Again, I find it super interesting that it's purposely deceitful.
Yes.
Asks about the teachings, and at some point, then they tell us through the story. At what point do they break bread? At the end of the walk, or
at the end of the walk? Yes.
And
so before the breaking of bread, there is this question. He somehow caught up with them, walked with them. And they started to talk about the news of the day,
what are you discussing together as you walk along?
Yes, exactly. So, and then they say, yeah, God, man, didn't you hear what happened in the last few days? All this about this guy being crucified and then rose from the dead. And then he didn't say, I'm the one, but
the apostles in that, sorry to interrupt you, but they do say, they replied, but we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel.
Yes.
There's a real defeatism in that statement.
Expectation. Yes, they felt, yes, absolutely. They thought that he would come back and, somehow overthrow Herod and that whole regime and everything. As both a political and a spiritual leader, even though very clearly he said, yeah, my kingdom is not of this world, it's a different kingdom. But, that was certainly the hope that.
And it's interesting that it still was, because obviously his message, look, the expectation before he came was, he's going to ride on a horse and he'll raise an army and, we'll get rid of the Romans. So very pugilistic, very fighting, etc. Then he comes along and the message is completely the opposite. It's about the weak and blessed are again, the message for the downtrodden, etc. So I understand that it and obviously still takes a while, generations, to change that mindset, because even after the teachings, even after walking 3 years with him, they still had that expectation of, oh, but he didn't, struck down Herod, or we're still under the Roman. So yeah, it's that's the reflection for me, is that it's not an overnight change, obviously, because we've been at it for 2,000 years and still fighting it.
And that whole idea had to be adjusted from an immediate return to a return that would take time, not just decades, not just centuries, but now the whole idea of Christ returning is very much a personal meeting with Christ after death, when he says, I will come back for you and take you with me to the Father's house. And, well, I suppose when we stand in front of the pearly gates, he will be there to welcome us, So, but the beauty of that is, don't worry. You don't need to find me. I will find you, which is a very comforting thought, So whether you are inside the church or outside the church, there is someone to meet us there.
And again, for me anyway, I keep forgetting because we have these statues of these apostles, and they're all weird and they're all men.
And strong and muscular.
But we
and
forget
huge
they
and-
were really young kids
Of
in
course,
some cases. They were
yeah,
really
sure.
young, inexperienced,
Mhm.
way over their heads people. So, I
And-
sometimes try to keep that in
And
mind.
look at Peter, of course. I mean, the guy was afraid 3 times, denied Christ, and then some cock needs to crow to sort of get him back. But yeah, of course. I mean, it wasn't just Thomas who was doubting.
That brings me to a lovely question. I believe it was from Eve, actually. You mentioned the 3 times that Peter denied him. Afterwards, after resurrection, I believe Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "You love me?"
Yes, exactly.
What do we learn from that? Does there need to be a 1-to-1 ratio of, bad deeds versus good deeds, or what's your interpretation of that?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Actually, I in marriage preparation, I sometimes use that example as well. We go, we fly off the handle sometimes, but somehow it's okay if you still love each other. Then you can rebuild a relationship even when it's broken. But if there's no more love, it's there is no future in it. So it is a way of saying, no matter what, you can betray me, but then as long as you love me, I will give you a chance. And then, of course, Jesus in the end says, he asked Peter 3 times, and then go feed my sheep, go do this, go do that. But in the end, he said, forgive 70 times 7. So forgive always. And that is why I think later Paul writes in his letter to the Corinthians, love is able to forgive everything, able to endure, able to be patient, able to, not put on airs and all that sort of stuff. So,
and sometimes not be blind, but I'm just going back to the Emma story, that the apostles, and I think the text is, were kept from recognizing him. And I want to emphasize on kept, because it kind of again points out the fact that it was purposeful, that
intended,
intended. That
yes,
I don't see, don't look for. Yeah, sorry, I tried to tie the 2 things together because I think they can be tied together.
I think it's in the reenactment, in the doing, that we remember, not only in the explaining of the scriptures. The word has to become flesh. It is in doing the scriptures that we remember Christ. I mean, their hearts were on fire when he started to open the scriptures to them, but they only saw the connection, the dots somehow connected when he started to not just, but to bring the word alive and do it, act upon it. Yeah, it comes back with Christmas, the incarnation of the word. It comes back with Easter.
Are you familiar with what's his name? I'm sorry, Rowan Williams.
Yes, well, depends which one, but yes, you mean the Archbishop of Canterbury, or that one?
I believe he's for sure the theologian. I'm not sure if he was also.
He spoke here in The Hague once, and he was fantastic. He looks a bit like Catweasel, the magician. But
he looks like what?
Catweasel, the old magician. But anyway, let's not go there.
No, I'm sorry.
But
you're showing your age now.
Yeah, sure, yeah. No, but here, he was one of the former bishops of Canterbury, a great pastor and theologian. Actually,
I'm only mentioning him because he had this interpretation, I guess, of the fact that Jesus' glorified body kept the wounds, according to some gospels, right? So because obviously Thomas says so. And that he interpreted it as a profound theological statement is that God's ultimate victory doesn't involve erasing trauma, but integrating it. And integrating, then we're very quickly in a psychological corner with Jung, etc. But and that the scars are the only reason Thomas believes, and we're back to, we have to. But I thought that was a really interesting take.
I think it's beautiful. I mean, our scars and our wrinkles, they show, what we suffered through our life. And yeah, exactly. They are part of our story. So you do not. For me, when I look at these different statues of Our Lady, for example, they always depict her as a beautiful, virginal woman, without any freckles or wrinkles or without any defects. Whilst, of course, she must have been an extremely revolutionary woman for her age. To bring an illegitimate child into the world and to actually defy the mighty on their thrones, and the whole Magnificat issue, going to her aunt and living with an older man, Joseph, and she must have gone and standing at the foot of the cross and everything. I mean, I would love to see a real woman who is, who has been scarred through life as a Mary statue, rather than this perfect, girl that has not suffered anything from life, that is such an immaculate, perfect. This woman must have been a real avant-garde and freedom fighter, to be so different in her time among these men. It was a very male-dominated world. She conquered her space, her credibility, her loyalty. So I think that glorified body of Christ with the scars is fantastic. We should depict Mary in the same way.
I mean, there is a reason, I'm sure, that they depict her the way she is. Just like, Jesus depicted as a white man, which he obviously wasn't, or so.
And Saint Joseph.
So, devil's advocate, why?
Yeah, well, that's the interpretation, and also of the church. I mean, we should look upon this virgin birth and upon this young maiden that gave herself. But they stopped there somehow, and they didn't somehow depict her in an older age. But it's the same with Joseph. You go to any nativity scene, you see Joseph depicted as a very old man, impotent.
He died young, of course.
Impotent, and because Jesus's birth was virginal, so Joseph had no part in it. But Joseph was a carpenter. I mean, where are the scars on his hands? I mean, why is he depicted as an old man in a nativity scene after the birth of his baby? Our art, of course, is fueled by a certain ideology, symbolism, doctrine. So it's always good to look at art in different cultures and different contexts. And not only from a Western European or Roman point of view.
So, I mean, you're well traveled. You've been to many places. Where have you seen a depiction of any saint, whether it's Jesus or Mary, or not that Jesus is saint, but a depiction of a historical figure, whether it's Mary again, that pleased you, that you were like, this is more true to, or is it across the globe?
Well, no,
perfect depiction.
But for instance, Maria Aparecida, the Black Madonna. It's good that they also depict Mary as black, or Guadalupe as Indian, I thought a very beautiful rendition of the Magi was seeing three kings biting the dust, literally prostrating themselves in their beautiful robes, but being humble enough to get dirty. Of course, these guys came through the desert, so I'm sure they were dressed like, majestic kings. They must have had travel suits as well, but when they came to Christ, and they recognized that, here status and all that doesn't matter. I mean, this is a homeless person and a non-welcome person. We have made this big effort to actually welcome him, and defying the revenge of Herod, of course. But to see a manger or a nativity set with three kings, not offering mere gold and incense, but three guys lying with their face in the dirt on the stable.
Just like yourself on Sunday, by the way.
Well, not on Sunday, on Good Friday.
Sorry, Good Friday.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do that. And Pope Leo, I don't know whether you noticed, he was walking on socks.
I noticed he carried the cross himself for the first time in a very long time.
The veneration of the cross in St. Peter's Basilica he stripped himself of the ring, the episcopal sort of signs of power or status. So he took off his shoes, and on socks he walked through that to give that veneration of the cross. So priests are on Good Friday, they are lying on the floor. You die with Christ in order to rise with him again. Like at ordination, you do the same thing.
Very solemn moment that was.
It is, yes. Also to lie there, it is something very, very humbling in a way. It's cold as well. It was quite funny because Deacon Paul was on the other side. There was this bier on which the cross was later on to be placed. And you're so busy with the entire service that goes through your head, and the altar service immediately, they go up, of course, already. So I saw Deacon Paul forgetting the fact that we should lie down first. So I just whispered to him, lie down. And then he looked at me and said, oh, yes. And then both of us, we went. And of course, there was this sort of, okay. Yes.
Do you then count down? Do you count to 30, to 60? Is there is there a rule of some sort?
Well, yeah, I never like to drag out a moment, as you know, but no. You get up when it feels time to get up.
Okay. There's not like a rule set in stone.
No. But yeah, like a minute of silence is a minute of silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got distracted. We were on.
Yes.
What were we on?
The depiction of a saint or an image that really shows the.
Oh yeah.
The authenticity of the character or of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier in a podcast, this not contradiction, but this thing that I'll use the quote in John chapter 20, verse 17. He tells Mary, Jesus, do not hold on to me.
Mm.
And then, I related back to Thomas. So apparently the scholarly interpretation is that Mary was denied, Mary Magdalene, not his mother, was trying to hold on to because she was trying to hold on to the past version of Jesus, whereas Thomas needed to encounter the future version. That's kind of, for what it's worth, the academic scholar interpretation of, why not holding or touching Mary Magdalene and not Thomas.
But I think with any death, of course, we hold on to our loved ones, but we also have to let them go. And it's that rite of passage is the whole process of mourning is extremely difficult. But you can only move on when you let the dead go. And yes, it's whether that was with the resurrection of Lazarus as well. If you would have been here, my brother would not have died. And oh my God, what could I have done to prevent this from happening? But after a while, he said, untie him and let him go, Let go of things you can no longer hold on to. And yes, if you have to pass it on to a newer life, a different perspective.
So when you say let go of the dead, what do you really mean with that? Because, for example, you don't want to let go of the memories. You don't want to get the laughter. But what do you let go of?
Well, there is no other way. You have to.
But what do you let go of?
The physical attachment. They are no longer there. And yes, it's an amputation. If you have been together for 40, 50 years and your partner dies, it's half of you who die as well. Dies. But of course, and it can consume you and completely, kill you as well, physically in a way that the joy is taken out of you, the purpose of your life, your future. And especially when it's a death that could have been prevented, a stupid death, a bomb or a conflict area, or, mothers losing children in an accident or whatever, uncurable disease. It's terrible, but holding on to it makes it even worse. There is a moment.
Because you live in the past.
Yeah, you have to let the dead rest in peace. And
yourself as well, right?
If you, it's a huge leap of faith, but if you can somehow get comfort out of the fact that they are not gone. God takes care of them, and yes, we have nothing else to hold on to.
Yeah.
So
Other than each other and God.
yes. Difficult, because as a non-married man or a man without a partner, I cannot imagine the deep sadness, or somebody without children, but when that happens to you, it must be the biggest cut when a loved one who is so much part of your life goes. Yeah, I've seen it happen so many times.
Well, I was going to say, Father, you hold these people's hands, so I'm pretty sure you have a good idea of
well,
what
yesterday,
it is like, you know?
I mean, I don't know whether Willem is listening today, but yesterday I anointed with the sacrament of the sick Willemijn. She's in a nursing home in front of the church, and it was busy, of course, packed church, but I said, no, I have to go because we are ready to do it. And her daughter and her son were there as well. We were just the four of us and her husband. Now, Willem has been taking care of Willemijn beautifully. She is entering into dementia and all that, but her daughter lacquered her nails, and she looked fantastic, hair beautifully done, under the most difficult circumstances, when life lets you down so much, because what is left of mom when mom is no longer mentally present, but there is so much dignity around that moment, that people invest in it. They hold on to the person that was always there for them, even though mentally she is now gone. So you hold on to the totality of life, and through that to each other, and you make the most of what life still has to offer. I was deeply touched by that. People, even in this moment of dementia, they are still so caring and absolutely giving themselves completely to this situation, and letting go, yes, because life, you can't hold on to it, but holding on to so much love, that's, Willem was already talking about, the sun is out, and tomorrow I bought a tandem bicycle so I can go on for a ride with her through nature, and she will love that. Yeah, amazing. So yes, letting go and holding on, it's yeah.
I love the. I mean, it's not video recorded, but you were telling a very sad tale, but with a big smile on your face.
Yes,
and I think that kind of says it all.
Yes, I could. Yes.
Maybe to wrap it up on some miscellaneous little tidbits, which I find fascinating, such as we were just talking to my brother-in-law, who I think pointed to the fact that it was almost fashionable, the concept of resurrection. I think he alluded to the fact that Nero allegedly resurrected, etc.
Yes.
Did the story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ trigger that fashion? What was it already a thing? Do you know? I mean, this is more historian kind of corner than theologian corner, but yeah.
I think the pharaohs, there were so many
reincarnation, I guess.
Absolutely, yes. Okay. This idea of I will continue to reign on, to be present, and my power or my status will be remembered forever. I think the beautiful difference with Christ was, he didn't build huge temples to his memory, but he gave us a gesture to remember him. And I think somehow that was much more effective than a pyramid or a huge grave. So do this to remember me. It's in the doing.
I would be remiss not to share this personal story when you mention this again. The big temple, he gave us a gesture, not necessarily a monument. When I believe I was 16, 17, I went to the Vatican for the first time. And I think I was probably like most people, doubting and wasn't sure. But I did very much get the teachings in, being a Jesuit for years, a Josephite, etc. And I arrive in St. Peter's Square, and I hold this philosophy of humility, simple, but then you're in this might and gold and ornate, which is the Vatican. I remember at the time, for me, it was really a turning page. I turned a little bit my back because I just could not marry those two things.
Mm.
Let me ask you in a different way, maybe. What would Jesus say if he would come down tomorrow? What would he think of the Vatican and the ornateness, the gold? What would he make of it? Isn't that somewhat contradictory with his teachings?
Well, when Pope Francis was elected, and he immediately had to put on that white cassock and all the paraphernalia that came with it, red shoes and a golden stole and God knows what, and he chose for the simplest outfit possible and said, "Carnival is over." I think that would have been Jesus' answer as well. But at the same time, I would love to do a podcast on aesthetics, beauty, and
noted. We will.
Yes, I completely understand what you say. And one of the relatives of a baby being baptized during Easter came from the Protestant church, and she had just been to the Vatican as well. And that's the first thing she said. She said, "I was so put off by all the wealth and all that." Yes. If I go to Almere, I see very little that raises me up. And Almere, please look it up on the, if you don't know the city, it was a modest city built in a polder, and we had all the opportunities to make that into a beautiful city. Because we started from nothing. So you could build a beautiful square, you can build beautiful buildings, you can, the urban planning and everything. But what have we done? We made it gray, drab, and completely unattractive. Sorry for the people who live in Almere. I'm sure you are very proud of your city, but it's, in terms of architecture, in my humble opinion, very sad. If I compare that to other beautiful cities, where over the centuries people have invested in beauty, in monumental buildings, whether it's a railway station or a royal palace or simply a beautiful fountain or a square or a church, what edifies us as people is bringing out the best in our art, in our music, in our architecture, in ourselves, in each other. And therefore, beauty is a visible sign of God's presence. And having been working in the slums, where beauty is completely denied, that was something so deeply lacking. We take our visitors, when they come to visit us, to see beautiful things. And somehow that shows what people are capable of. If I go to Paris, or if I go to Rome, or if I go to Chicago, modern architecture can be fantastic as well. We excel when we are passionate about something. And religious buildings, yes, they have to do with power, but also with passion.
So we should also see it as a testimony and a legacy of what we're capable of as a community.
Yes. And there were palaces where the poor had free access, and they didn't have free access in the political or imperial houses.
Vatican, by the way, was built on the old circus.
And on the tomb of St. Peter, of course.
Yes, which was just next to the track because he was a slave. Anyway, maybe for another time.
And of course, these buildings don't just happen overnight, but
600 years, I believe. The second Vatican temple, not temple.
Well, look at Sagrada Familia now in Barcelona. How beautiful is that?
Right. So we went miscellaneous and we went a completely different direction. So let us land the plane almost on the hour. A couple of weird scripture things. I know. Let me go to Matthew chapter 27, verse 52, 53. Not sure if you remember where I'm going with this.
Go there.
The tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. Mm-hmm. They went into the holy city and appeared to many people.
Yes.
The zombie invasion.
Yes. The Walking Dead.
the Walking Dead.
Yes. Yes, of course, it's a foretaste of, this expectation that when Christ comes again, that we will all be taken up to the heavenly Jerusalem. Beautiful. Yes, we don't know what happens, but people feel that what was dead and buried somehow has been given a new future and a new purpose. So
Okay.
I would stop there. I'm not going there to say. I would be quite scary actually if you go to the cemetery.
And maybe finally, lastly, I had no idea of, but it's really interesting. In John chapter 21, verse 11, he's strangely specific about the count of the amount of fishes that Peter catches at the end of the 2 week.
Mm.
Do you remember how many fishes? It's 153.
Okay.
And again, he's being very, very specific about this.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, academia and scholars have tried to figure out what the hell that number means,
Mm-hmm.
because there's 7, 70, 40, etc. But 153 seems to be, very much still a bit of a mystery. Was this on your radar at all? Did you have any idea that this was kind of a quirky thing?
It's always, I never try to read too much into things because, it always leads to a tricky path, you can miss the boat terribly if you do that. So I just don't know. I have no idea.
Nobody knows is the short answer. I think some say that back then there were exactly 153 species of fish, which I can't believe would be true. But yeah.
It would be the same as, the Genesis story that, of course, during the Easter Vigil, the first day, the second day, and all these things that were created and all that. Yes, there is, of course, the number 7, but is this the number of completion? And the 7th day God rested. Beautiful. But the more you read into it, the more somehow you get off the point, because the point is that this beautiful story from the very beginning, we believe that God had a hand in it because it's too beautiful to just exist.
Did the book of Acts help you in bridging, the Old Testament and New Testament, which is what it's for, right? I plan to read it more attentively.
Yeah.
Is it helpful to people to read Acts?
Well, definitely. It's the book of the first Christians starting to get themselves organized and get themselves together. Yes.
Okay, on that note, read your Bible, folks.
That would be. I mean, what can I say? You ask a priest, is it helpful to read Acts? Yeah, I suppose so. I'll go for it, yes.
Is there anything we missed from the Octave or any other? I mean, obviously we missed plenty of things, but anything you would like to share?
We also have an octave of Christmas, of course. So these 8 days of Easter joy, yes, enjoy.
Enjoy, everyone. The sun is shining. Father Shark's going on holiday. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed week and day, and filled with chocolate and joy and laughter.
No chocolate, thank you. But
no more chocolate.
Yes, I look forward. Actually, I'm away for 7 days, so my octave will be. I'll come back, and when I come back, I have a wedding of a Mexican and a Dutch couple, and then Pope Leo is going to Africa, and he is visiting 4 African countries. So the first Sunday that I'm back, on the 19th of April, I've invited the 4 ambassadors of the 4 countries that Pope Leo is going to visit. Equatorial Guinea and Algeria, Cameroon, and what was the last country? Sorry, ambassador, that I forgot. Cape Verde, I think. So I thought, let's thank the ambassadors for the hospitality to Pope Leo. But also, what a beautiful opportunity to let our African community rise and shine a little bit, of passing on Catholicism and Christianity with so much energy and faith and new life in the universal church. Because when I see the devotion and also the contribution of our African parishioners, it's in many different ways, not only but through talents and collaboration.
Triplets.
And triplets being baptized at Easter. Yes, that was amazing. No, I'm very happy already. I look forward to that. So yes, I'm going on holiday, but my mind is already on. Oh, it's great to come home.
Thinking out loud on top of my head, as I do, maybe we could invite one or a couple of these ambassadors to join us on a podcast.
Oh, the Cameroonian one, definitely.
To talk a little bit about faith in...
She is a very active parishioner here and humble enough to sell cookies after Mass. Can you imagine? That sort of humility is so telling that people are here to serve. And she is a very capable lady, Madeleine. And now the coordinator of the African ambassadors. So she's recognized for her beautiful talents.
I think we should invite Madeleine to talk about Mary, yes. Maybe talk a little bit about...
Yes, or perhaps about what did the Pope's visit to Cameroon mean to you?
I think we have a list of 4 new topics for future podcasts. On that note, people, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't be a stranger. We actually also have a TikTok account because the teens are taking over. So we have a TikTok account. We have a new Facebook page. Again, engage with us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Questions for Father Shaq. The harder, the better. Wishing you a wonderful and blessed week, Father Shaq. Thank you so much as ever.
Thank you, William. Without you, it would never have happened.
Talk to you next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.